on the platform as well, who my predecessors will be interviewing today. But before I hand over to them, I think it would be proper for me to do an introduction of why we started the quarterly leadership series. As a society, we realized that we had a lot of professionals that were really at that inflection point in their career where they were asking themselves questions like, what next? How can I make a difference? How can I go from this level of success I've achieved to the next level? How can I achieve the significance I'm looking for in my career? And one of the things that were lacking, or sometimes they found as a gap, was they did not know what skills was required to move from being a technical expert into that leadership series. So we started the leadership series as a support for our members, really focusing on how we could help our members make that jump in their next, in their career. However, due to popular demand, we realized that there was a need for us to expand it to all professionals. So we opened it up to all professionals in our field. Sorry, people are saying they can't hear. Maybe admin wants to deal with that. So today, we now have the second series. The first was by Mr. Fola Adela. For many people that listened to that session, it was pretty successful. We still have the link on our YouTube page. If you want to go back and listen to it, I appreciate if you do that. Today we have, like I said earlier, His Highness Khalifa Muhammadu Sanusi to be the one to be interviewed by my predecessor. I don't want to go into too much detail. A video will play shortly to really introduce the CFA Society in Nigeria and tell you who we are and how to get in touch with us should you want to be a member. Thank you, admin. There's no volume. We can't hear.
No sound. Can we?
If it's not working, should we stop it?
There's still no sound.
Yeah. Should we just stop it and
No,
let
him.
You can play later.
Frank,
Yes.
can you? Yeah, okay.
So right now, I would now hand over, before I hand over to the moderators to start the session, I think it's very important for me to read the profile of our guest speaker, His Highness. So I'll summarize what his profile, because it's quite detailed, but I'll just make it a bit of a summary. Khalifa Muhammadu Sanusi II was born in the city of Kano on July 31, 1961, into the royal family. He attended St. Anne's Primary School, Kaduna, before proceeding to King's College, Lagos from 1973 to 1977. He obtained a bachelor's degree in economics from the Ahmadu Bello University in 1981, where he also taught economics. In 1985, he launched a distinguished banking career at Icon Merchant Bankers and left in 1991 to study Arabic and Islamic law at the International University of Africa in Sudan. In 1997, he returned to Nigeria and joined United Bank of Africa to run its credit and risk management department. In 2005, he moved to First Bank, where he rose to become the group managing director in 2009. On June 1, 2009, Khalifa Muhammadu Sanusi II was appointed as the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria by President Umar Musa Yar'Adua. He led the Central Bank of Nigeria to rescue the financial system that was badly battered by the global financial crisis and initiated extensive reforms popularly labeled the Sanusi tsunami. Notable amongst them were the cashless policy, the bank verification number, BVN like we all know it now, the Nigerian Uniform Bank account number, which is the number we all operate with at the moment, upon his exit, and many others. Upon his exit from the central bank in 2014, on June 8, he ascended the throne to be the 14th Emir of Kano. Khalifa Sanusi, too, is currently the Chancellor of Kaduna State University, is the Vice Chair of Kaduna Investment Promotion Agency, he is the Khalifa of the Tijaniya Islamic Movement, independent non-executive director of the MTN Group. He's the chair of the Baban Ghana, a private agric initiative helping rural farmers. I hope I got the pronunciation right for the Hausa people. I practice that a lot. Chairman of the Black Rhino, a sub-Saharan African infrastructure fund of the Blackstone Group, and is also the chair of the advisory board of 1 Million Teachers, a non-governmental education organization. This is a brief summary of his profile. I'll now hand over to the moderators, Sade, Odunaiya, and Banji Fehintola to start the session. Sade and Banji, over to you.
Thank you very much, Ibuku, for that introduction. I'm sure that everyone in the room would agree that there's no doubt that there's a lot to learn from the person that we're focusing on today. His Highness, the Khalifa Muhammadu Sanusi, where, I am actually privileged to be on this side asking you all the questions today that I will be expecting that you would answer, and I have no doubt you're going to do justice to them. Our focus is on leadership and leadership traits and what ensures that people do get the right kind of skill in terms of moving people to do what they believe in. So I'm going to start off by also giving a little bit of background as to our relationship as CFA Society Nigeria with the Khalifa. You see, our relationship dates way back. In fact, if not for the Khalifa, maybe the society wouldn't have attained as much growth as it has attained today. He happened to be a guest speaker at the annual conference of the CFA Institute in Scotland, I think in 2015, where he gave a speech, and after he finished, I understand, because I wasn't there, that there was a standing ovation. I heard the story from those who were there, and subsequently, everyone started asking about Nigeria and about him. In fact, the CFA Institute had to change their policy on recording of sessions after that event because they realized they didn't record it, and so many people wanted to listen to it. When the society started, he was the first person that gave us the first support in the form of donation as a CBN governor, and that is one of the seeds that has brought the fruit that we are all enjoying today. When the first president of the CFA, the first visit of the CFA Institute president occurred to Nigeria, we had no choice because the president who was coming, the CEO, wanted to meet him. So we went to Kano and we met him. Then he was an emir. When we had our first ever investment conference, you can see there's a lot of first. He honored us by being present. He was our guest speaker at the dinner after the conference and the Charter Awards ceremony. So we are actually quite, I don't know what word, we are pleased to have him with us because we also see him as one from whom we can learn. And today, you can put it on record, the CBN has the largest number of charter holders in the public institutions in Nigeria. So Khalifa, if you would not mind us starting our questions now, we want to learn a lot about you. We want to learn those little things that made you become who you are. What are the things that keep you going? So my first question basically will be for you to please share with us precisely what is it that drives you? Who exactly is the Khalifa? How would you describe yourself? What is it that keeps you being the person that you are? And I'll just start with that. You're muted, sir.
Yes, sir.
So good morning, everyone. And I can see so many people have sent me good mornings. So I'll just reply verbally. Sade, it's a difficult question because you really are asking one question that goes through my entire life and how I got formed and what are the values that underpin me. But I would say the most important thing for me throughout my life was to be consistent. And I will summarize a lecture or a talk that I gave last week to young people during the pre-colloquium in Kaduna, where I told them about the influence of my father on shaping me. And the central point to take from that was my father made it very clear to me from a very young age that I needed to define myself for myself. I needed to identify how I wanted to be remembered. And he gave me simple examples. You know, it doesn't have to be anything big. It doesn't have to be anything great. For example, if you decide that you're not going to be late for an appointment, he said you'd be surprised if you say 3 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 2 o'clock. It's a difficult thing to do all the time. Within 2 weeks, everybody will know that you are never late for an appointment. And if you're not remembered for anything after you die, people remember you as that person who was never 1 minute late for an appointment. Or if you decide you're always going to be wearing sparkling white. I mean, something as mundane as that. Everybody remember you as, oh, he was always dressed in sparkling white. So my father taught me that if you really want to be something, if you really want to be remembered, you've got to focus on 1 or 2 or 3 things. Don't try to be everything. I've got to accept that you cannot be the best at everything. It could be a value, it could be an attitude, it could be an approach. And I think for me, as I said in that colloquium, at some point, I must have come to the conclusion that the only thing I want to be remembered for is somebody who speaks truth to powerful people. And that has been a major driver for me. Now, in terms of influence, what that means is you've also got to make sure that you live up to certain expectations. And I've always been driven by a certain competitive streak, always wanting to be the best in everything. You know, wherever I go, I've always said performance was relative. And I've always compared myself to and benchmarked myself against whoever I see as peers. So as a banker, I wanted, if you're a SIM manager, look at all the people in your department, you want to be the best. If you're a CEO, you want your bank to be the best. A central bank governor, you want to be the best central bank governor. As Emir, you want to be the best Emir, and so on. So I think these for me are the 2 major things. A strong emphasis on competence and a desire to excel, as well as consistency in terms of sticking to the truth, irrespective of the cost.
Thank you very much for having started us on a very strong notes. I hope all of you in the audience, I would like you to be typing in your learnings because it's important that you don't let things just go away. As you pick it up, type it in, then your brain can register it. Banji, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sade, and good morning, Khalifa. Good to see you again. I think Sade said a lot of things about our relationship with you, you know, at the CFA Society. And honestly, I'm one of those people that's extremely proud to be associated with you. Sade talked about the CFA annual conference in Edinburgh. It was in 2011, Sade, not 2015. And I was in that room.
Okay, thank you.
In the audience, watching my central bank governor dazzle the whole world. I was so proud to be a Nigerian. And you're correct. I mean, after that conference, there was a standing ovation. The whole room went crazy. But more importantly, there was someone who asked a question during the Q&A. I'm sure Khalifa remembers clearly like yesterday. And he said, can you please, he was an American guy. He said, can you please come and take over our own central bank? Essentially, that was the comment that came from him. And that was, you know, it was Ben Bernanke that was the Fed chair at the time. I thought that was powerful. and I think Khalifa mentioned just now wanting to be the best, wanting to be the best. So I just want to talk a bit about your time at the central bank. That was an era. It really was an era, and I'm sure everybody agrees. So can you just tell us, every day you woke up, went into that beautiful building in Abuja, what was going through your mind every day that you went into that building?
Okay, thank you very much, Banji. Now, first of all, now it's going to take a long time, and this is going to be a long answer. I've got to try to make it short because I've spent the last 1 year writing a book on my 5 years at the CBN. So I've got a lot of information crammed in my head right now, having reviewed that history. But let me say that, and I think as a general comment, in whatever you do, it's extremely important to understand why you are doing it. And if you understand why you're doing it and see the value in what you're doing, then you're able to give that commitment to it. Now, many people go to work and they're working in a bank, or they're working in the government, or they're in politics, or they're ministers, or they're commissioners. And it's about either having a rank, or having a salary, or earning a living. And that is not really something that gives you the passion and the drive. Okay, so when I was appointed governor of central bank, okay, one of the things I had to tell myself is, okay, what is the central bank? And how does my work matter to the Nigerian people? Now, people do not understand how crucial the central bank is until things go wrong. Okay, so you wouldn't know until you've put all your life savings in a bank, and then one day you go and find that the bank is bunkered up, it has failed. Then you know that the central bank is important because you've lost all your savings. You wouldn't know how important the central bank is until you're buying a bag of rice for 7,000 naira, and then you go to the market and it's 30,000 naira. You wouldn't know how important the central bank is until you take your card and travel and you don't have cash. And then you go to France and you try to check into a hotel and you find that it's not working. Okay, so a lot of the time, people think of the central bank as this institution. They don't realize that there are people in that institution who are supposed to stay awake so that you can sleep, so that you can put all your money in the bank and go to sleep knowing that your money is safe, so that you can just take your card, hop on a plane, go anywhere in the world and know that you can pay for your cab, you can pay for your hotel, you can pay for your food, you can pay in the shops. Okay, so that you can actually plan on your salary and know that it can maintain your family because inflation is under control. So that you can afford to register your daughter in a medical school in the UK or the United States, and you have a good idea of what the exchange rate is and how much you need to educate her to the end. You don't want to start with the dollar at 150 and end up with the dollar at 700 naira, because you're earning naira. So for me, central banking was about the poor people of Nigeria. Okay, so people called me a hawk, an inflation hawk, for example. I mean, I met inflation at 15.6%. We drove it down to 8%. I was uncompromising on inflation. And people said I had high interest rates. Yes, high interest rates, but maybe were not good for business. Maybe they were not good for the rich people. But low inflation protected those people who are buying gari by the tin. Okay, and made sure they continue to eat over those 5 years. Okay, I was committed to a stable exchange rate. Okay, because that helped people plan. It helped investors plan, it helped people plan, it helped people keep their children in school, pay their medical bills, and so on. I was committed to a payment system. You know, when I became governor, many people don't remember, if you had a Zenith Bank card, for example, you could not take money from a First Bank ATM. You would go to the Hilton and you see like 7 ATM machines, because every bank had its own machine, and even the local banks are not talking to each other. And I said, well, why? And so we forced the banks to have interconnectivity, and then we went into
the new card system where you could use your card. And I remember there was resistance from MasterCard and Visa card until I threatened to cancel their licenses in Nigeria before we got to a point where you could take your Nigerian Naira card, which was not possible before then, go abroad and use it. Because I said, how can somebody from Kenya use a card from Bank of Kenya in London, yet a Nigerian could not use a First Bank or UBA or Zenith card in London? You had to have an account in Barclays or Standard Bank if you want to travel abroad. And people were carrying cash. God help you if you go to London without cash in your hands, you know, or traveler's checks. You couldn't just take your Naira card and spend money. And by the time we were through, you could take your Naira card and go and pay for a hotel in Singapore. You know, transfers of money. At that time, you had all these, you had to write a check, go to a bank, you'd wait 24 hours, call the float. We made it possible for you to make an instant transfer from your account to another. Okay, issues of access to credit. So for me, it was always about the human being. Okay, how can the central bank, okay, improve the quality of the human being? Now, the people may not know the amount of work that goes into that. Now, people just go on their phone, transfer money from their account to another. They don't realize that Nigeria was about the only country in the world that could do that. Okay, you've got one BVN. When we started the BVN, people said to us, well, no country has it, because usually banks have unique customer ID. Okay, for us, we made sure that we had a unique ID for the entire financial services industry. I think up till now, we are the only country in the world that has that. So if you're biometric and you register with the Zenith Bank branch, that information is available to every financial institution in the world, because we basically transformed NIPS and used it, you know, and we were benchmarking. So going back to my question, okay, to the first question, what drives me? Okay, we went to places like Spain and Portugal and Brazil. These were the most efficient operationally countries. And just like, well, why can't Nigerian banking operations be as efficient as these countries? Went and basically contracted the Portuguese company that was in charge of their operations and brought them in to transform NIPS. You know, if you've got high inflation, the question is, why can't we be a low inflation environment? Why can't we be a stable exchange rate environment? Why can't we benchmark, and why can't we be better than others? You know, so for me, every single day, my question was, I didn't want any Nigerian to ever wake up. So when I became governor, there was a banking crisis. As you know, 1/3 of the loans in the banking industry were bad. 40% of the deposits were at risk. People were going to lose billions and billions of money. And my first target, before I even went into all these other reforms, was I wanted to make sure that nobody lost a single penny in a Nigerian bank. Okay, the realization that Nigerian banks trade with other people's money. You know, if you set up a brewery, if you set up a textiles company, if you set up a manufacturing company, people pay you cash and take your goods. That's the end of the business. Well, now with the bank, it's a different business, because the bank takes people's money and trades it. So if that money doesn't come back, those people lose the money. You look at typical bank balance sheet, 80 to 90% of the funding comes from other people. So there was this understanding that I was very clear about, which probably was missing before, where people think of protecting shareholders, interested in the value of the shareholders in the banks. You're thinking of the management, but for me, the management of the bank, the shareholders do not own the bank. A bank is owned by its depositors. And my primary responsibility as central bank was to defend the depositors. Now, if shareholders lost their shares because they appointed useless management, that is their problem. If management has to be fired or put in jail for mismanaging funds, that is their problem. But I had no doubt in my mind that my primary constituency were the people who had put money in the bank. Why? Because they put the money in the bank precisely because they believed there was a central bank that was looking at that bank and making sure that their money is safe.
So I was personally responsible for any money lost in the bank. And I would have to hold management and shareholders responsible if they place those deposits at risk. So I think for me, in every role, if you don't understand why you're there, if you don't understand what is the value of what you're doing, you don't have passion. So everything we did, from saving the banks, from setting up AMCON, from facing all the fights with the bankers, and you can see all the bankers that are being put in jail for all the money that they stole, from fighting shareholders, everything we did, we're able to go through because we knew that we were fighting a war on behalf of people who had placed money on trust. Okay, when we started Cashless Nigeria, there was a lot of trouble. People said, oh, we don't have the technology, we don't have this, but we knew what we're doing. We knew that at the end of the day, we could not continue with this system where you'd be carrying 500,000 naira cash. You're traveling out of Nigeria, you have to carry cash because when you come back to the airport, if you don't have a car waiting for you, God help you, you could not pay for a taxi if you didn't have cash. We had to change that. And we had to make Nigeria compete with the rest of the world. So understanding why you were doing it, that was what kept me awake, and making sure that every day, this worked. I don't know if that summarizes.
It's a very, very comprehensive answer, Khalifa. Before I hand over to Sade, maybe a quick follow-on on that question. Legend has, so you can either confirm or deny, to date, audience. Legend has it that when you were the governor of the central bank, you talked about consistency, being the best CEO, best central bank governor, and all that. This is correct. You won Central Bank Governor of the Year 3 times out of 4. And there was a year you didn't win it. Legend has it that you were not happy about it. Do you want to tell us about that story?
Okay, so there were several magazines and journals and publications that gave these awards, and these awards were usually based on a poll, okay, from economists and analysts covering different countries. At the World Bank IMF meeting, there was a magazine called, I think there still is, Emerging Markets. And Emerging Markets gives these awards on a regional basis. So you've got Sub-Saharan Africa, you've got Middle East and North Africa, you've got Europe, and every year, through a poll of analysts and economists, they would pick the Central Bank Governor of the Year. The African Banker magazine does that for the African continent. The Banker magazine, which is owned by Financial Times of London, also does it on a continental basis and on a global, and they give a global Central Bank Governor Award. In 2011, I was African and Global Central Bank Governor for the Banker magazine, and they don't give that award to the same person twice. Okay, so that is understood. The Banker magazine, I think, made me African Banker of the Year in 2011. They also try not to give the same person twice, but Emerging Markets doesn't have that rule. So with Emerging Markets, whoever comes out first, if you first 5 years in a row, that's fine. So yeah, I think in 2010, it was 2009, 2010, I was Central Bank Governor of the Year for Sub-Saharan Africa. 2011, the same. And then in 2012, it was won by Jill Marcus of South Africa. And given everything we had done with inflation, with exchange rates, with the banking system, when I went to Washington, I found that I wasn't the winner. I was rather surprised. So I picked up the phone and called them and said, I'm not complaining, but I would like to know what Jill Marcus has done that I didn't do. And they're actually shocked because no one had called them. I said, look, I'm not lobbying of her. I just want to understand so that I can improve. And they then went to the extent of just giving me, telling me, look, we had this poll, we had the journalists, and Jill Marcus came up with 92, and you had 91%. So there wasn't really much of a difference, but she came up first. But governor, you won it the last 2 years. So I said, no, because I don't see why I shouldn't win it every year. Yeah, that was it. But that's just me. It's not something that I don't know. Yeah. Is that competitive edge? It's because it's just extremely important to me. Even small things. When I used to tell people, when I would go for meetings in the World Bank and the IMF, it wasn't just about what you say, it's just about the meetings. Okay, for example, even appearance. You want to wear suits and dress in a manner that you're not looking worse off than the US Federal Reserve or the Bank of England governor. You get there to represent a country. Okay, you want to be there as the most elegantly dressed central bank governor. For me, all those things were extremely important.
Thank you, sir. Sade?
Okay, thank you, Banji. Thank you, Khalifa, for the gems that you're dropping. And I can see in the chat box that people are picking them up. One thing is clear, purpose of why you're doing what you're doing was very clearly mentioned by the Khalifa as to what should inspire you every day in whatever action you take. Now, it's one thing to have an idea. It's another thing to have a team that is working with you, because nobody's an island. No leader is able to achieve anything on their own. So I'd like you to share how you were able to put together a team, inspire them, because I'm sure as the ideas came out, you also mentioned that there would have been opposition. What is your source of strength in keeping that team continually on the course to ensure that you were able to achieve all the things that we're now enjoying today in the Nigerian financial services sector? Banking in particular?
Okay, I think for me, the first thing is to make sure that you put round pegs in round holes. When I went to the central bank, and I was amazed. I was amazed by the quality of personnel within the central bank. Coming from the private sector, coming from the banking industry, we had this view from outside that the central bank was just filled with civil servants, with bureaucrats, and we thought we were smarter. Okay, I got to the central bank, and the first thing I did was to look at the people and their CVs. And I realized you had one of the highest concentrations of high quality staff. All they needed was leadership and being put together. So starting with the deputy governors, okay, so you as a person would have to know what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses, okay? So for example, I came from a background of economics. I had taught economics at the university. At the master's level, my field was monetary economics. I had a distinction in monetary economics. So I knew that as far as economic policy was concerned in the central bank, I had strengths. Okay, in banking, I had spent the years preceding my being governor as chief risk officer in First Bank and UBA. So I knew that I also had strengths in financial system stability. These I knew were two strengths that I had, but I had never worked in operations. If you ask me how we did BVN or Nuban, or I don't even know, okay? I basically knew what we wanted to achieve. I don't know anything. I mean, even on my computer today, even on my telephone, I can do WhatsApp, I can do email, but 70% of the functions on my phone, I have to call my children. If I'm typing something goes wrong, I want to edit, open a file, I have to call my children. I don't know how to open a zip file, I don't know anything. Okay, so I knew that was a weakness. Okay, corporate services was a weakness for me. I had never worked in administration in my life. Okay, so the first thing was I needed to make sure that in the areas where I had a weakness, I put in people whom I could delegate total responsibility to. Okay, so we had a Tunde Lemo, for example, who had worked in the bank, who had worked in operations, who had been a chief executive of a bank before he became deputy governor. And I said, Tunde, you are the governor of operations. I will give you, I don't know anything about IT. I don't know, but I will tell you what I want to achieve. You go and deliver. Okay. And if you fail, you are responsible. If you succeed, we all take the credit. Okay, I got Suleiman Barrow and said, Suleiman, you're in charge of corporate services. I don't know about HR. I don't know about you. I will tell you what we want in terms of manpower. I don't know about how to do contracts and procurement. I'm not going to start reading the Procurement Act at this point in time. You make sure that we go through due process and everything we do. If you go and give a contract without due process, you're responsible. So I gave them that responsibility. And I said to Sarah, you're in charge of economic policy, but you have a problem because it's also my field. So we're going to be working on it. And I then had to find somebody because there was one vacancy of deputy governor. I want to find somebody who would run financial system stability. And because I became governor at a time when the Nigerian banking industry was in crisis, I wanted to make sure that I had a deputy governor who was not in Nigeria, somebody who had not been compromised by the system, because we need somebody independent. Okay, and basically I had hunted Kingsley Moghalu, who had left the United Nations, who had set up a risk management consultancy in Geneva. And I said, why are you doing risk management consultancy? If you're really so good on risk management, come, and let us do risk management in Nigeria. And I basically brought him back to be a deputy governor. So the first thing was I made sure that I had a team. Okay. Now, we then also had to go with a shared vision. And if you recall, before I became governor in 2009, the central bank was in denial about the crisis in the banking industry. And that was the first thing I had to deal with. Okay, I knew there was a crisis. The central bank was saying there was no crisis. And I know that PwC, for example, had a few months earlier gone around the country. They hadn't seen the central bank. The central bank hadn't seen them, but they've seen the finance minister. They've seen me as MD of First Bank. And they had done a presentation that showed clearly the risks of the banking system. And I believe that. But I then called PwC to do a presentation to the entire CBN management team. I wanted them to come and tell them honestly and clearly the situation that the Nigerian banks were in. So we first of all had to convince people that there was a problem. And then after the presentation, I said, look, I'm convinced there's a problem, but the only way we'll know this is to actually go into the banks and check. So let us at least agree that we should send in teams to go on a special examination of banks and confirm if these suspicions are correct. Because pro forma, you can imagine if banks have huge capital market exposures and the stock market has crashed, if banks were at the extended window taking money and they were not able to pay, you would know that there was a problem. It was very clear. Okay, so before we went into the banks, and I'm going through this step by step. We did this with practically everything we did, but I think with the banking industry, to give you an idea of how we went about things. Okay, the question was, how do you prioritize the banks? Which were the banks that were at the highest risk? Okay, so the first thing we did was to look at all the banks that had been for a long time at the central bank extended discount window. I would say on the face of it, this is evidence that these are the banks that have the most serious liquidity problems. Then we called in the IMF. And what we did was to give them financial statements for 3 years of Nigerian banks without giving the names of the banks. Okay, so we'd have bank A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. We had the 24 banks like that. And we gave them. And based on that, they went and did stress tests and came out with the banks based on those financials that looked like they were in distress. And those banks turned out to be the same banks that were at the extended discount window. So we knew before we even went into the banks, we had a very good idea where the biggest problems were. And my idea was to fix this problem as quickly as possible because confidence had to come back to the market. And that was how we selected the first 10 banks. And when our examiners came up with the results, we got them to sit with the bank MDs, discuss with them, and we basically had NDIC, we had central bank, and we had professional accounting firms going in. And then by the time the results came out, we were all convinced that if we didn't do anything about these banks, they were going to bring down the entire system. And that was how it worked. So I think for me, it was letting people, if you're a general, you want to make sure you're not moving without your troops. So even though I was a risk man, even though I had a very good idea of what I wanted, I needed to have everybody understand why we're doing and why. Okay, now when we're trying to do AMCON, I realized that, okay, if I take a step back, okay, I had an idea from February that I was being considered as a possible candidate to succeed the governor of Central Bank. Okay, I wasn't sure it would happen, but I didn't want to be made governor without preparation. So in the 3 months before I was governor, and I knew that if I became governor, the first thing I would deal with was the banking crisis. In the 3 months before I became governor, I read everything I could about banking crisis. I read about the Asian banking crisis. I read about how these Asian central banks resolved the crisis. I studied the Malaysian Bank Negara Malaysia. So, the things that I did in the central bank on fixing the banks, they were not new. What I did was to reproduce exactly what the Bank Negara Malaysia did during the Asian financial crisis. I had studied it. And because I studied it, and I realized that many people didn't understand AMCON, they didn't understand what an asset management company was, they didn't understand what a resolution trust was, I took the entire board of directors of the central bank and took the leadership of the Senate Committee on Banking, the House Committee on Banking. We went to Malaysia on a strategy session. Okay, we sat for 6 hours with the governor of the Bank of Malaysia. This was Zeti Akhtar Aziz. Zeti had been governor of the Central Bank of Malaysia for 11 years. And before then, she was a deputy governor in charge of financial system stability during the Asian financial crisis. So she was directly responsible for fixing the financial crisis in Malaysia, which was the model that we had. She sat with us for 6 hours with her team, answering questions. Those 6 hours were education for my deputy governors, for my directors, for the Senate and Bank that they would have gotten in a 1 year MBA at Harvard, because this was somebody who had done it, asking questions. And the politicians who were saying, oh, why are we the only country removing bank chief executives? Why are we the ones prosecuting them? I remember the chairman of the House Committee on Banking asking her, so did you remove bank CEOs? She said, of course we removed them. We even put many of them in jail. So people then saw that this was something that had been done somewhere before, over a decade earlier, but this is a way to fix a banking crisis. By the time we came back, the internal opposition, because if you read Sun Tzu, The Art of War, he says, when you are in a battle, make sure that the ground on which you stand is secure, and the ground on which your enemy stands is shaky. I could not go into a battle with bank CEOs, with shareholders, with vested interests, if I did not have the central bank and the banking committees of the Senate and the House and the president behind me. And the only way I could get them behind me was for them to understand, to see what I was seeing, for them to understand why we're doing what we're doing. When I went to Erador with the initial findings of the banks, I said to him, this is what has happened. This is how much money is at risk. And I said, Mr. President, we have two options. One option is you can do what we have always done. Okay, we can say that these banks have failed, hand them over to NDIC, depositors lose their money, the management walks away with all the billions they've made, the borrowers walk away, and that's it. That's the end. But Mr. President, I don't think posterity and history will forgive us if we go back to this same old way of doing things. These people who have stolen money now become governors, they become ministers, they become senators, and the people suffer. Said, alternatively, you can authorize me to put in money to save these banks, to protect every depositor. But if we do that, Mr. President, we have to be ready to take on the management of the banks, the shareholders of the banks, and the borrowers who've taken money from the banks. And these are powerful people, Mr. President. Some of them contributed to your campaign. They have friends in your government. And I do not want to start and have you come and tell me to pull back. The president said, I go for the second option. So, Mr. President, if you ask me to go ahead on this line, I want your word that no matter the pressure they put on you, you're not going to interfere in my work. He said, I give you my word. And that was how it was. You know, I had to get the president's backing. And, you know, the president then said, who do you need? What do you need from me? I said, I want 3 institutions. I want the police, because I know I need to beef up personal security around myself and around all the people that are going to do this. I need the EFCC, because if we find things wrong, we are going to prosecute the bankers and we have to put them in jail. And I need DSS. And you know, I was sitting there, he called all the heads of those organizations. He called the IG of Police, Onovo. He called Farida Waziri of EFCC. He called Gadzama of DSS. Each of them came in and he said, this is the governor of Central Bank. I have given him a national assignment. Give him your support. So by the time we were taking over the banks on August 14th, which was very surprising, we had the police to protect our central bank who were going in with the new MDs. You know, we had the DSS which stopped bankers from running out of the country until we identified those who were going to be under trial. And we also had EFCC, and we also got the lawyers. We're paying the lawyers. We got the Attorney General to give us a fiat, because we knew that the government would not have the money to pay the best lawyers. These banks had the money to pay the best lawyers. So we also needed, as a central bank, to make sure that we had the best lawyers prosecuting these people. That was how we were able to jail Cecilia Ibru. Now we've jailed Atuche. We've jailed Okionwosu. And we're going to jail Akingbola. He's going to jail, you know, because the evidence was hard. The evidence was solid, you know, of what they had done. So this was how we operated. Now, on a general level, we then had a clear strategy sessions. And, you know, I don't know whether, you know, we started the Bankers Committee annual retreat, where and the idea was, look, the central bank is a leader in this institution, but the banks are stakeholders. If we really want this to work, we have to work with the banks. So we started in 2009 with Enugu, then it moved to Port Harcourt every year. And it was December, where we sit with all the banks and have a strategy for the Nigerian financial system. I said, this is what we're going to focus on. And everybody gives an input. We had Ike Mokede in charge of the Economic Development Committee that basically organized this. And when we sat down, okay, and for me with strategy, we had to force ourselves. Every deputy governor would sit, and we had to force every deputy governor to identify 3 key things that he would focus on, and just be focused on it. It's like in a bank. If you're in risk management, your job is to what? It's to minimize losses. Okay, it's not your job to go and market. So if the ED corporate services or commercial ED corporate banking commercial wants to book a loan, well, that's his business. He has a target. Your own target is to make sure that he does not create a bad loan. Okay, so for example, the ED economic policy had to have it very clear that her target was price stability. That's a primary target. Price stability conducive to economic growth. And she was focused on that. She was focused on that at MPC. As far as she was concerned, anything that would create inflation, she would resist. Okay, the ED operations had targets that revolved around having a very efficient banking system, low cost. So everything we did on shared services, everything we did on cashless Nigeria, everything we did on currency management. If you look at the cost of currency management before I became governor and the cost of currency management when I left, you'd see we halved them. Okay, the whole idea of the 5,000 Naira notes was part of currency management. The banking system reforms, the cashless Nigeria, POSs, ATMs, mobile banking, all of those were supposed to reach, and shared services. I mean, why would every bank have its own data center? We try to have a shared data center and so on. So all those reduce the costs in the industry. NIPS, became shared services. Imagine if every bank had to have its own back office. NIPS is the back office for all your POSs. It's back office for all your ATMs. All the banks in Nigeria just leverage NIPS. So these were the kinds of things we did, and by the time people then define their strategy, and you say, look, Sarah, if inflation goes up, you're responsible. Tunde, if you don't bring down costs, you're responsible. And Suleiman, you have to make sure that we have the quality human beings. That was, by the way, how we started to care about CFAs. Because when we set up a financial markets department, I said we needed to have a dealing room that was as good as any dealing room anywhere in the world, Citibank or whatever. We need to have a first-class dealing room, investment, put in a proper dealing room. We brought in a head of FMD from outside and said we needed to have the internal skills. So we went out to recruit CFAs and to encourage and sponsor central bank staff to go and get CFA certification, because the financial markets team in central bank could not be less educated and less skilled than the financial markets teams in commercial banks. Otherwise, you're dealing with Standard Bank or Citibank or Access Bank, and they would run rings around you. So we invested in that, and that was part of what Suleiman Barrow had to do. Okay, we went out to recruit PhDs in economics. Charles Soludo had started that. We recruited more because we needed to have the data. By the time I left the central bank, we were able to predict with precision what inflation would be. We had models that could predict that. I could actually say inflation next month, over the next few months, this is where it would be. And it'll be 1 or 2 basis points off, but that was how solid the model was, because we had all these PhDs in statistics, in economic research, who were doing a fantastic job. They were just brilliant people within the bank. Okay, and we also had to increase their pay. There was a government white paper before I became governor of central bank that said regulators should benchmark themselves against the industry that they regulate. When I became governor of central bank, the first month, I think my salary was 200,000 naira. I went to the president and said, I can't live on this salary. I can't, and he laughed. I said, I was CEO of First Bank. Unless you want me to steal money, I cannot live on this salary. So he said, so what do you want me to do? I said, well, you have a government white paper that said we should benchmark ourselves against the institutions we regulate. I want you to approve that we benchmark ourselves. He said, but if you have a white paper, why do you want my approval? I said, no, just so that nobody will say I increased my salary myself. And I went back and wrote to the president and said, this is the white paper. I want your approval for us to benchmark. And we went and got a consultant benchmarked against First Bank. So I was benchmarked against bank MDs. And my deputy governors were benchmarked against EDs and directors against GMs. So in no time, we got to a point where the central bank staff were as well paid as not all, but a large number of the banks. They were motivated to work. There was no need for no banker could come and corrupt them or. So these are all points, touch points, on this matter, and that was how we were able to get where we went. And we had this commitment and this passion, and people understood what they were doing, and they knew they were with the leadership that would not let them down. And so that was it.
Thank you so much. That's a whole textbook that is being lived out in reality. I hope that we're all picking the steps as he was marking them. Banji, you can go on.
Thank you, Sade. I'm almost lost for words, Khalifa. And well, I mean, your time at Central Bank, I said it earlier on, was an extraordinary time. And, history will always be kind to you when people look at, what happened, what you went through with the team and all that. So I don't want to talk a lot about that anymore. I want our audience to see you in a different light, which is the transition from the governor of the central bank to an emir of the ancient city of Kano. When I met you recently, I told you I lived in Kano, so I have a special connection to the city myself. And I recall, you know, when we came to the palace to see you a few years ago, I just could not reconcile SLS of the banking sector with the SLS, you know, in the palace. Totally different. It was unbelievable. So I want you to just talk to us. How did you make that transition? How easy was it? You know, two different institutions. How did that go? And maybe some other things prepared you for that. Maybe you can also let us know.
Well, I've always, from a very young age, okay, I've always believed that if you want to do something well, you don't learn when you're there, okay? So like I said, when I knew I was being considered for governor, I spent 3 months studying, okay? When in UBA, I wanted to start the BAL2 process in risk management. I actually spent time reading books on risk management in BAL2. So by the time we got to Accenture, if you ask people in Accenture, by the time we got to Accenture to come and write the policies and all that, I knew what were the best practice policies in credit risk, operational risk, and market risk. I remember when they first produced a document on market risk. I don't know, Sade, you might remember. I called them and said, "What's rubbish?" You know? I said, "Are you giving me this as a policy?" I threw it back at them, brought a whole set of books on market risk policy. I said, "Go and read these books. That's what I want to see." Okay, so the first thing is you've got to prepare yourself. The emirship is a religious role. Originally, our ancestors came in as part of flag bearers for a jihad, and Emir provides a leadership to Muslim people, and he is supposed to basically play that role. And one of the challenges in this country is basically the whole definition of Islam in modernity. Okay, you want to move northern Nigeria into the modern world, you want to make progress, you want to change certain attitudes using religion. Okay. 1991, I left banking. I went to the Sudan. I studied Arabic. I spent 4 years and did a degree in Sharia and Islamic studies. I was preparing myself for that role because I wanted to be Emir. And I did not want to, I knew you could not start learning Arabic, start learning the Sharia when you are Emir. You had to know it before you got there if you want to be an effective Emir. So that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is the same principles in the central bank apply in every role. So a simple example, we had a palace that was built by Emir Abbas and later by Emir Bayero. And you know, inside the palace, you had this huge, beautiful mud structure that was falling apart. Okay, now when that palace was built, it was probably the best palace in northern Nigeria, huge. But things had changed. You go to Sokoto and Julius Berger had built a new palace for the Sultan. You know, you'd go to Katsina, they had concrete buildings. You go to Adama, the concrete, and we had a mud house, just huge, but just mud. Okay, but it wasn't just Nigerian palaces. Okay, I have friends. I mean, I've been. I'm sure you've seen pictures. I've been to St. Clarence's house to see Prince Charles, Queen Maxima of Holland. Since her days as Princess Maxima was a very good friend, and even as Emir, she'd invited us to for her and the king to go and have dinner in their palace in Amsterdam. I remember one day coming out of the palace after we went with two of my cousins, the current Emir and my cousin Munir Sanusi. I took them to dinner at the palace of the king and queen of Holland. And on our way back, I said, look, guys, if the king and queen of Holland come to Nigeria and visit us, are we taking them to our mud house? You know, and I felt, no, we needed to have a palace in Kano that if the Queen of England came to the palace where my grandfather was Emir. So I said, if the Queen of England were to come to Kano, I want her to come into that palace and know she was in a palace. Okay, so nobody asked me to do it. I brought the whole place down and rebuilt. And today you have a structure that if the Queen of England or the King of Saudi Arabia or the King of Morocco ever comes to the Emir of Kano and goes inside the quarters, he would see a palace. I know it's a palace. There's not like it. Okay. We also had issues. Okay, what are the problems of society? I've said, for example, when you talk about our economy, when you talk about what are the major problems you have in economics? Recently, I talked about declining GDP per capita on a PPP basis. What are the variables that go into that? There's GDP growth, there's exchange rates, there's inflation, but there's also demographic growth. So as Emir, if I can't do anything about exchange rates or about inflation or about GDP growth, I could do something about the demographic growth that has created poverty and unemployment. And the root of that is the structures of the family. You know, we keep focusing on our women, and it's important to focus on the women and reduce fertility rates, but you also have to look at the men. You know, a man who has 4 wives can produce 4 children every year for 10 years or 20 years. You know, theoretically, they can have a baby every year. Okay, and for 20 years, and that's 4 times 20, that's 80. You know, a woman can sleep with 10 men for 10 men consistently and still have only 1 baby in a year. Okay, so we had to look at things like family structure. We had to look at why is it so easy for people who cannot afford to maintain wives, to maintain children, to go and just marry more wives than they needed and produce more children than they needed. And these children became a problem for us. They became the whole army of unemployed youth. Okay, and one of the ways to do that is to focus obviously on the education of the girl child, because statistics show that when women complete secondary school, they tend to have a lower fertility rate than those who haven't. If they've gone to university, it's even lower because they get a job, they have a career, they know how to space children, they know the importance of investing in the education of children, they know that it's about quality and not quantity. And you have 3, 4 kids, well educated, that's better for you than having 10 children who are on the streets. Okay, they understand that. Okay, so these are roles that you can only play in the position of an emir. You can't come and change family law because you're a politician. You can't come and talk about age of marriage. You can't talk about regulations around polygamy. You can't talk about, and so what I did was to set up a committee of scholars from the different schools of law. We had Salafis, we had Tijaniya, we had Qadiriya, we had Izala in a committee, and say to them, fine, you are the scholars. I need you to look at Islamic law, look at Islamic jurisprudence and reform the law. Why is it that countries like Malaysia, like Morocco, like Tunisia, like Algeria, okay, Iran, Egypt, why is that all those countries where you have Muslims have been able to produce a Muslim family law, Muslim family status that has addressed these issues using the same Quran and Hadith, and we don't have it? You know, so for me, it was a continuation. Again, like I said, if you ask yourself why you are there, okay. So when I talk about these polygamy, it's not that it's because I know that ultimately this is what will help us realize demographic dividend. We cannot continue multiplying. Look, the Nigerian geographical area has not increased. The same geography we had in 1960 is the geography we had in 2020. But the population in northern Nigeria today is probably 8 times what it was in 1960. And this is classic. When you go to an economics class, microeconomics, maybe the very first lesson you learn is Malthus, Reverend Thomas Malthus. You have land, you increase labor, you get a diminishing marginal productivity, and then you have what? War and pestilence. That's always in northern Nigeria. All these kidnappings, all this, it is about increasing human beings, okay, on limited resources. And we don't see it. You've had desertification, you've had a reduction in the water levels in the Chad Basin, water levels in the Niger Delta. Our farmlands have become houses. In northern Nigeria, we have not even started building vertically. Everybody wants to have his own plot. Okay? Instead of having turning your farmlands into houses, start building vertically. Build multi-story buildings, 1 man and 1 wife in a flat with 1 or 2 children. Build vertically and leave your land for farming. What we've done is we've taken the farmland, turned it into houses. And then the grazing land where cattle used to go have become farmlands. Why would you not have clashes between herders and farmers? It's not religion, it's not ethnicity. It's a struggle for resources. It's about proper management of resources, proper planning of cities. And, you know, so for me, as Emir, it's about, again, how do you use that role? Either in terms of advocacy or in terms of influence or in terms of advice to government to change a mindset, to let people understand that in the long-term interest of society, these things have to be done. And it has to be done within the context of people. And if you don't face the problems in northern Nigeria, you're not going to face the problems of Nigeria. You've got millions and millions of people. Okay, we talk about the Almajiri. You know, everybody treats them as lepers. First of all, these children did not produce themselves. Secondly, they are in a school reading the Quran. And I ask myself, when you come and treat them, I say, oh, these are Almajiris, out of school children. If they were not in those schools studying the Quran, where would they be? The government has not built the schools. They don't have the teachers. Okay, if you take them out of those Quranic schools, they'll be on the streets as political thugs, as drug addicts. So a role. Instead of condemning them, how do you make sure you look at those Quranic schools and improve them, invest in them, give them nutrition, give them mathematics and literacy and numeracy, and then mainstream them after they finish the Quranic schools so they can go into secondary education or technical and vocational skills and begin to earn a living. So those are things that I think if you're not close to the people, if you don't live with them, you don't understand. And one of the things I've always said as Emir is that when I was in the central bank, I dealt with numbers. So you would see, oh, X million people living below the poverty line. When you now become an Emir and you go to a village and you see their houses and you see their food and you see their clothes and you see their health condition, their nutrition, you understand what it means to live on less than $2 a day. You don't. I mean, when you sit in looking at numbers, you don't. Until you come face to face with the reality, okay, of people who cannot pay for the 2,000 naira for medical bills for their children and their babies die because of 2,000 naira. You know, you don't know that. So I think for me, it was an extremely good eye-opener, an opportunity for me to see the human beings behind the numbers and to understand why it is doubly important to do it. And sometimes the people on whose behalf you're acting do not understand it. Okay, I mean, some poor people don't understand why you should stop them from marrying. After all, you have 4 wives, so why should I not marry 4 wives? Okay, they don't understand that, you know, and you've got to explain to them that, look, yes, I have 4 wives, but and I have so many children, but have you ever heard me go to look for somebody to help me pay for food or pay for school fees? That is not your situation. You have to wait until you're able to afford it before you do it. And this is what's happening in other Muslim countries and something that we have to do. So my attitude is, you, as Emir, perhaps I didn't have enough time to get people to totally come around to my way of thinking. And what I'm doing now is, as I said, I'm going to write a PhD thesis on this same thing, codification of family law, and write a book and publish a book. And even if I'm not Emir, I'm hoping that people will read the book and other people will take up the idea, or maybe another generation will take it up, but it's something I believe needs to be done, and I hope it will happen. So it's just service.
Thank you so much. Sade?
Okay, thank you, Banji. Thank you so much, Khalifa. This is, it's rich, it's deep for those who are listening. I want to go to the lighter side of things now, if you permit me. I would like you to share some personal things with us. What do you do in your leisure time, for instance? We'd like to know, because a leader also is a person. What do you do in your leisure time?
You know, well, first of all, my pastime is reading. Okay. And I keep telling people that as far back as I can remember, I think maybe going back to my days in King's College and the university, I can't remember a single day that I haven't read something new deliberately. Okay. And when I say something new, I mean something that is not related to my work, something that is not the Quran, which I see as worship, that I just it's new. Okay, so I read something that I have never read before and try to learn something. So I spend on a day, I must have at least 30 minutes in which I read, whether it's a novel or a book on economics or a book on philosophy or a book on history or whatever. I make sure that I read. Now, the advantage of that is you don't have to remember everything. What happens is I find myself sometimes in a conversation and I find myself talking as I read something many years ago that stuck somewhere in my brain that I never thought I would use on it. You know, when I was governor of Central Bank and we had Islamic banking, you know, I was able to push it because when I was an undergraduate in the Sudan, I wrote my bachelor's thesis on Islamic banking, and it was in Arabic. So I was a central banker who also had knowledge of Islamic banking. So for me, that's my favorite pastime. The second thing for me is a vacation is basically a varied routine. It's about doing something different. Okay. So when I'm doing something different, even though it may be work, it's a holiday for me. It's leisure for me. Okay. And in the next 2-3 weeks, I'll be going to France for 3 weeks. I'm going to Bordeaux on an intensive French language course. That is a holiday for me, you know. And so from time to time, I'll go and do French, you know, go and learn some French. When I'm doing my PhD, I'll be looking at research methodology. When I'm doing my thesis, I'm going to Morocco to write the PhD thesis. But while you're doing the PhD thesis, you're also learning Arabic, you're learning French. So for me, I used to watch football a lot because I'm an Arsenal fan. Unfortunately, Arsenal has basically killed my interest in football. I cannot see myself supporting another club because it's at the highest level of betrayal. You know, I can't go, I certainly can never support Chelsea. I certainly can never pray for Manchester United or Manchester City. I hate those clubs, you know. But Arsenal, by the time Arsenal starts losing to Brentford, you have to, so what I have told myself is, as Khalifa of Tijaniya, I should not be watching football. That's my excuse. Right? You know, I'm going to use religion to justify not looking. And I'm actually trying to stop my children from watching football because you've got Chelsea fans, Man City fans, and I'm now using religion to say that it is against Islam for them to be watching football, you know, because I don't like the idea of seeing them cheer their clubs while Arsenal is losing. So yeah, that's it.
That's quite interesting. The theme that runs through everything you said to us about yourself, you go for quality, you're always looking for something new and how to apply it, and you are very open-minded. Interesting. Vacation is learning French. Who would have thought vacation was just lying at the beach at Bordeaux and wasting time? But obviously, you are one of those that time you use it to enrich yourself. Thank you so much, Khalifa, for sharing with us. And there's a lot of laughter in the chat box about your Arsenal team and you're stopping your children from watching football because you don't want them to cheer a team that you do not support.
It's against Sharia.
It's against the religion. Okay, good. I'll let Banji ask his question as we then will take the last one around.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I was rolling on the floor too. Now, the good thing about Arsenal people is they're also very loyal people. So Khalifa is a very loyal person. Consistent is the word. Loyal to Nigeria as well. So I think I'm probably going to talk about Nigeria.
So imagine treachery in my family. When my own son is a Chelsea fan, and another is a Man City fan, I can't believe, you know, that my own children that I gave birth to, you know, can cheer, you know. So he has to go out. I've told him he can go and watch the match, not in my house. It's around.
No, thank you. I mean, that's hilarious. And like I was saying, I mean, Arsenal fans are known to be very loyal. So now I understand your loyalty to Nigeria and our great country. And I think that's something that is gradually dying off, unfortunately, from your generation to ours and then the younger generation. You know, we see lots of young people, many of them listening to you today, unfortunately. You know, they are all trying to live the Nigerian dream, which today is, how do I leave this country? That's the sad truth. How do I leave this country? So I want to maybe, you know, if you can speak to them, people listening, people that will listen to this later, is there hope? Where's the silver lining for this country, for the young people? What hope should they hold up to?
Well, you know, first of all, I mean, I tell young people that they are the ones who can build this country. Because at the end of the day, I mean, for us, it's gone. I'm 60. You know, I think one of the challenges we've had in this country is that people who should have moved away a long time ago have refused to move away. And the young people have not stepped up to take charge. I mean, my father joined the Foreign Service in 1957 as one of the first set of 12 career diplomats. He was only 27. And he was given responsibility for setting up the Nigerian intelligence services. If you go to NIA today, the road is Emir Sanusi Road. Go to NIA and they have the picture of directors, because at that time it was called Research Department. He was the first director of research. So he was the first DG of NIA. He was 27. You know, he was director of intelligence during the Civil War. He rose to be a federal permanent secretary by 45. He had retired by 48. I'm 60. You've had people who've been heads of state in Nigeria in their 20s and 30s. Why are people in their 30s and 40s in Nigeria waiting for other people to fix Nigeria for them? Why? At the end of the day, you know, that is the problem. You know, you're talking about the fourth industrial revolution. You're talking about the digital age. You're talking about fintech. And you're electing presidents and governors who do not know how to use a laptop. I mean, this is the reality. So my point is that I have never waited. And at the end of the day, I feel that our role as Nigerians is to understand that this country belongs to all of us. So, I mean, as I said, as governor of Central Bank, my job was to do that job very well. As Emir, to do that job. When people say I criticize people, I say I tell people I criticize because I've earned the right to criticize. I'll tell you a story of something a meeting I had with President Jonathan once. And it was in the presence of his PPS ambassador, Hassan Tukur. And he had said to me that he was not happy because I have been criticizing his ministers. I was governor of Central Bank. I've been criticizing the government, that he felt that I did not like him. And I said, okay, so Mr. President, what does liking you mean? You know, Mr. President, you gave me a job to do, okay? My job was to control inflation. My job was to fix your banking system. My job was to give you an efficient payment system. I gave him a rundown of what we had achieved in the central bank on inflation, on exchange rates, on reserves, on payment system, and said, I have delivered on my targets 100%. And because I have delivered on my target as governor of Central Bank, I have earned the right to criticize your petroleum minister and your power minister and your education minister and anybody in your government who has not delivered, because nobody criticizes your government on the basis of a failed monetary policy. We are being criticized on the basis of the failure of people. These are people who like you. What have they delivered for you? So why do you want me to like you? Assuming if people tell you I don't like you, fine. Mr. President, if you want love, you go to Madam Patience. I remember Patience met me later and said, you are a rascal. My husband told me what you said, that if you want love, you should come to me. I said, of course, you want love, you should come to the first lady, not to me. I'm a central banker. I'm supposed to deliver low inflation to him and not love. And at that time, he didn't say anything to me, but he went to his wife and said, do you know what this central bank governor told me? He said, the man is right, but he's just a rascal. But the reality is we all have to take responsibility where we are to move this country forward. And we have to speak. We have to know that this country belongs to us. Running away, where are you going to run away to? You run away to somewhere where you treat as second-class citizen. I mean, I go to the UK, I'm sure with respect only because I'm coming in, I'm renting my own house, I'm not depending on them, I'm not looking for a job for them, I'm going to spend money in their shops. If I go as somebody looking for employment, I will see humiliation. It is not your country. There is nowhere you get the respect that you get as a Nigerian. Now, what we want to do is make this country, a country where people come to. And the reality is that there are things that are happening. If you go to Lagos, you've got hospitals that are now becoming benchmark hospitals. People will be coming here for medical tourism. We can build educational institutions that will do that. Look at the companies that we have in the tech sector in Lagos, the fintech, the logistics companies. So there are things that are happening. Let us go, And this generation has the opportunities that others don't have. With technology, with IT work, with entrepreneurship, people can go. And I think what we need is to realize that we can no longer depend on the government to do it. Now, we do need a good government to provide the environment. And we need to scream and shout and complain. But I think we should also be realistic. From my understanding of economics, I understand that for the next few years, things will be even worse than they get better because we're in a very difficult situation. But I mean, if you have the right leadership, if you have the right vision, if you have the right strategy, you can do it.
Okay. Thank you, Khalifa. I don't know if we can crave your indulgence for an extra 15 minutes of your time.
I'm here for you. So thank
you. We very much appreciate that. Because I know there have been so many questions on the chat group. We were struggling. Someone says extra 1 hour. They need to start paying after 15 minutes. So I don't know, Sade, over to you. Any thoughts before we go to the chats?
I would say that it would be good if the Khalifa can give us an idea as to when his book will come out, because we haven't had time to really dig through everything. So we can have something to look forward to, because I'm certain that most of the people who are listening to you will really like to read the book. Yeah, somebody just typed it in. Yes, the book, please. So if you can give us an idea of when the book will come out.
Okay, so there are a number of books cooking. Okay, one has actually been, I think it should be next week, Tuesday, that I have an event. And this is called For the Good of the Nation. This book is a collection of articles that I wrote between 1998 and 2005. Nothing to do with central banking, nothing to do with economics. They deal with things like Islam and gender. I've always been committed to women and women issues and women equality, Sharia and modernity, the whole issue of ethnic and religious identities, restructuring, and so on. So these are really political and social articles. And I think there are 2 interviews that I had with FT when I was governor of Central Bank in the back as appendices. So that book is going to be presented to the public on the 24th of August at an event where I'm launching a fund, for my SDG challenge, which I've done, basically, and the money is supposed to go into scaling up ideas from the challenge to deliver education to disadvantaged populations. The book on central banking is called, controversially, it's called Confronting Vested Interests, Central Banking in a Rentier Economy. And that talks about an inside view of my 5 years in the central bank. I mean, people know what we did. Okay, so people know we brought down inflation. People know we did BVM. People know we did cashless Lagos. People know we did Islamic banking. Okay, but how did we do those things? How were we able to achieve those things? What were the challenges we faced? And how did we come face to face with the fact that you do have a group of people in politics, outside politics, across the different ethnic and religious groups who basically hold this nation to ransom for the extraction of rent, and how do we deal with those people? And I think that book is important because it's not just a revelation on the kinds of things that have happened, but also, I think, a statement from me on the importance of strategy, of thinking, of consistency, of people. You know, whenever I won an award as best central bank governor, I would stand up. Every time I stood up, I said, I'm taking this on behalf of the 6,000 employees of the central bank, you know, because they did that work. You know, so you take the credit, but how did you get those 6,000 people to come together and deliver? You know, and actually be happy, because look, if you've got people in monetary policy, and they know that their job is to deliver low inflation, you'll be shocked in central bank how people cheered when inflation came down. You know, it's like you got a bonus. We've brought down inflation. When we reach single digit, yeah, you know, we're down to 9%. You know, just like you win in a football match or you win the premiership, because that was the target, bring inflation down below 10%. And when we did that, just like we had won the premiership or the Champions League. So that book, I think, gives an insight into how we defined our role, how we saw it, and how we worked on it. I saw something on the independence. Yes, you know, we maintained the independence of the central bank, and I was fortunate, honestly, because both Eradua and Jonathan respected the independence. Now, politicians would always try to get what they want. It's up to you now to handle them. Again, another example. I remember once President Jonathan called me and said, Governor, I have too many complaints about your high interest rates. I would like you to bring down interest rates. And I said, yes, sir. I will. It's not a problem. I can bring down rates tomorrow. So I said, yes, all I have to do is just release money to the system, print money, and interest rates will crash. So why don't you do it? I said, well, you have to tell me where you want the exchange rate to be and where you want inflation to be. Today, inflation is 8%. Exchange rates are 155 naira to the dollar. Do you want the naira at 300 to the dollar? Do you want inflation at 14-15%? I can bring down interest rates. He said, no, I don't want devaluation. And I don't want inflation. I said, then you can't have low interest rates. You know, you just tell me. You just tell me. I'll tell the country that the president has asked me to devalue the currency so interest rates will come down. So it's subtle blackmail. No politician, no president would allow you, a central bank governor, to go and make that announcement that the president has said you should devalue so that interest rates will come down. Because I explained to him that the people complain about interest rates. Yeah, you know, they are, yes, it's bad. I said we're introducing SME funds. We have refinancing for small and medium enterprises. Those who are paying high interest rates were the rich people. They're not the SMEs. Okay, and so for me, and he understood. So you must be able to manage your boss. You must be able to educate him, because the president did not understand that you cannot have low interest rates, low inflation, stable exchange rates at the same time. You know, and then he said, okay, but come, can you bring down these interest rates before elections? I said, of course. you know, because these were his people who I could see where the pressure was coming from. You know, or I remember when the government needed money. Under the Act, the central bank can only give 5% of previous year's revenue to the government. I remember they reached their limit, and Ngozi called Tunjele more money. He said, "You have reached your limit. Tunjele, you have to talk to the governor." So she called me. Lamido, we need someone. We need like 40, 50 billion. I said, "Well, you've reached your limit, Ngozi." "Yeah, your deputy governor said I should talk to you." I said, "You talk to me, that I have the right to break the law." You know? And she said, "Lamido, you're a difficult person. You know, you have to help us." And I said, "Okay, look, the only thing I can do for you is we have done a half-year audit. I know what my surplus is for half year. I have a good idea what it would be at the end of this year. I can give you money as your dividend in advance, your surplus. You know, I can give you 60 billion because I think this year I'm supposed to give you 80 or 90 billion. I can give you 60 billion now. And after audit, I'll give you the balance." She said, "Lamido, you're a star. Thank you very much." You know, so we gave them the money as advance payment on their surplus, not as a loan. You know, and, you know, so it is, again, our responsibility to know how to manage bosses. And she was very happy that I had an excellent relationship with finance. You know, forget all the issue about 20 billion and all that, even with the president. For me, most of the time, we had an excellent working relationship because I made it very clear that I had a role, that you gave me a job, and there's a CBN Act, and there's BOFIA. And my job was to do that job to the best of my ability in the context of those two laws, you know, and they recognize that. So for me, I think so that's it. Your independence was important. And if you actually Google my name and Independent Central Bank, you probably find an interview I gave with Reuters before I left the central bank, where they asked me my greatest achievement. And I said, for me, my greatest was I proved that in Africa, you could have an independent central bank that was truly independent. And I felt that was my greatest achievement, you know, because that was very difficult in Africa.
Thank you very much, Khalifa. We want to take the video on the CFA Society now. Thank you so much for indulging us, because we have done 10 minutes overrun right now. We'll take the video, and then I think we will wrap up. Banji will just ask one last question, and then we will call it a day. So Admin, over to you.
We are professionals. We are impact-driven. We are CFA Society Nigeria, a member society of the CFA Institute Global Network of Societies. Our mission is to promote the highest standard of practice in the Nigerian financial services industry and provide a vibrant community for our members. The CFA Charter signals the holder's commitment to professional excellence. As thought leaders, we collaborate with stakeholders to ensure adherence to ethical standards, better education for professionals, and to build market integrity. We are the leading voice for advocacy in the finance and investment industry in Nigeria. To partner with us or become our member, visit us at cfasocietyng.org for more details. CFA Society Nigeria, making finance a force for good.
Okay. Thank you for that very good video. I think we just have a few more minutes, and I want to be sure we have Khalifa on the line, just to be sure that I'm not asking myself. Okay, just to be sure.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see you again, sir. So I think I've looked through the chat. There's too many questions. You've touched on many of them in one form or the other. People want to know about the economy, what the future holds. You know, you've kind of mentioned that there will be some bumpy ride before things stabilize. So I think that already gives an insight into what is to come. Lots of people have been sending messages about will Khalifa contest 2023 election? We promised ourselves we're going to stay away from controversy. So I'm going to ask that question in a different way.
Actually, it's not controversial. I mean, I can say that it's over and over that I have never been interested in politics or contesting elections. Okay, and it's not because I don't think I can play a role. Okay, so it's just about playing a role where you think you're strong. Okay, I mean, my role in politics will continue to be that if I see if the political process brings up a candidate that I think is good, I've got to support him. I've got to tell people who listen to me that I think this is the person you should support. If I can help raise funding for him, I should be able to raise funding. If I have access and I can give an input into policy and give advice and even recommend people, I could do that. Now, if I go into partisan politics, okay, I've got to ask myself, do I really have the preparation? I've seen how party primaries are run. I've seen how delegates are bought. And you know, this is a space where you go in and a completely uneducated person who's been in politics for 10 years will dance rings around you. Okay, I've seen how votes, okay, votes are cast and they're not counted. I've seen how people go to collation centers, pay money, okay, bribe INEC, bribe the police, bribe SSS. I've seen the security services, okay, align themselves to the interests of those who pay them or to the interests of the ruling government. So people actually put in the effort, they actually win the election, but they're not declared. Okay, I have seen how clear injustices happen. And you go to the judiciary, and the judiciary, they use a small technical point to dismiss a case when it is very, very clear that the person has a case on some technicality. Now, I don't play games when I don't have a level playing field. If you set the rules, if the people you're playing with are not able to play by the rules, you have to be able to also play their game in order to win. And I don't have the capacity to do that. You know, I have seen political parties where people sit with you in the same party. They say they are with you, but they're working for another party. You lock the room, you have a conversation, they're talking to your opponents, and the level of hypocrisy is just too much. So for me, those who are already in there, you've got some very good people. We hope and pray that the better ones are able to rise to the top, and we'll support them, you know. But I think that if I go into partisan politics, by the time I deal with political thugs, by the time I deal with the security services, by the time I go and start trying to bribe judges, you know, by the time I get to wherever I want to go, I will not recognize myself. You know, so I'm very, very clear that I do not go into things where I don't have a high chance of success. You know, I don't want to go to do something and then spend the night and my conscience is disturbing me, conscience bothering me. I mean, can you imagine if I run for an election and I have to give money and then thugs go to Kano and they're killing people, fighting and killing people because they are my supporters. That the blood of someone is shed, which is what you see every time in elections, on the altar of me becoming president. I mean, how would I live with that? So I think that for me, until you actually, unless we have a proper electoral process where you have a level playing field, where the rules are applied, where people go and vote and the votes are counted and the winner, then yes, then I can come and stand and we talk about ideas, we talk about, so we're hoping that government after government, you get improvements in the process. So now this conversation around electronic transmission of votes, why is it a problem? Why is it a problem? I mean, that is one of the areas where elections are rigged. People vote, I think you have to carry the ballots manually, okay? The process, sometimes somebody goes and attacks and burns the ballot, you know, or you go to the collation center and then people bribe people and then things are signed wrongly, and that's what INEC has to use. What is it that's wrong? We all use phones, we all use WhatsApp. What is it that is wrong with, from every polling unit when elections are done, transmit to the center? Why should anybody in his right mind fight it? But people that are fighting because they plan to rig. They plan to rig. Because if you don't plan to rig, why would you do that? I mean, it's so bad. The Senate committee that went through the bill, the Senate committee that recommended it, the chairman of that committee now came and voted against his own recommendation because it was his party position. Now, how do I go into a process when I know that people have already decided that they plan to rig it? You know, it's got to be among them. So all we can do is, as flawed as the process is, there are good people. We have seen some governors that are shining examples. And I mean, my friend Nasir El-Rufai, the governor of Borno, you know, the governors that Lagos has had, you know, even Governor Wike, you know, forget the politics, what he's done in Rivers in terms of work. You've got governors who have been there, who've gone through the process and who've done extremely well. And so we're hopeful that you can still get this, throughout this flawed process, you could still get a president and governors and ministers, okay, who will do it. But until they actually continue to improve the legal process around elections, and you know that when you go in, it is your ideas, your views, your priorities that will decide. If people vote for you, you're there. If they don't vote for you, you're not there. I think for me, it would be foolish to go in, you know, you go and get lost, you know, but those who are already in there, we've got to encourage, we've got to support with everything we can to see that they get to the top.
Okay, thank you. That was a very powerful and good answer to what might otherwise have been a difficult question to navigate. But we like your truthfulness and the way you said it, the way it is. We're optimistic that things would improve in Nigeria, and hopefully one step at a time, we'll get there. I mean, I see lots of comments, people saying the youths are staying away for the same reasons, but I think you've already charged us earlier on that, look, the future of Nigeria depends on the youth. So even if Khalifa at 60 says, I don't want to do it, it does not stop the 20s, the 30s from being bold to take.
I mean, okay, how about the youth going in, for example, as INEC officers, collation officers, and refusing to be bribed? How about them going and saying that this is the vote, this is what we signed, and we're going to make sure that we report it. We're not going to take a bribe. You know, how you know, you understand, you can play a role. How about them actually setting up a system so that they can, okay, be have a whole network so that they can actually be collating the data and publishing, making it online and available, even though, yes, they're not official figures, so people see what is happening and it's out there. There are many things that people can do. And I'm not saying that everybody should go into politics. And like I said, it would be wrong to say we should go. If anybody has an interest in it, he should go. He should go. If anybody is prepared, if anybody knows the skills, how to manage it, how to maneuver your way in the system. Because look, I'm not saying that everything should be perfect. The American system is not perfect. Okay, we saw the hanging chads in U.S. elections. You know, that basically brought George Bush in. We've seen compromises in the judiciary, even with the hanging chads. Okay, where the Supreme Court in Florida basically went into a biased judgment to support George Bush Jr. So it's not, you don't have a perfect system. Our democracy is not perfect. I'm just saying that people should go where they have things. I have never done anything without knowing that I am qualified for it, I'm prepared for it, and I'm competent. Okay? I look at the people who have succeeded in politics. I look at people in my state who have become commissioners and who have become party leaders without an education, and I'm asking, can I compete with these people? And are they really the people that? So that's for me. You know, the kind of thing that I look at. But I mean, if people really feel that they can do it, I think they should go. I think good people should go into politics. I think if we don't have more people, we're not going to improve the system. But to be honest, I think I have given my bit, and I think where I am today, I can still find a niche where I continue to give my bit, but based on what I think is my expertise, what I think is my qualification, and where I think I can add the most value. I can't go into politics because people want me to go into politics. I go into politics if I feel that I can do it.
Okay, thank you. I mean, Khalifa, I think, to be honest, this has been a great session. I think I'll just pass it on to Sade to say a few closing words. From my part, I really thank you for your time. It's probably been the best use of my, 2 hours this year, or even in a very long time, learning from you, hearing from you. And I certainly wish you the best. We will continue to learn from you and interact with you. So thank you so much for this session. Sade is going to say a few words, and after that, I think the Vice President of the Society wants to also give a vote of thanks. Sade, over to you. Thank you, Khalifa.
Thank you very much, Banji. Banji has said it all. For me, this recording will be a reference point for a lot of people that I would like a lot more people to hear what you have said, because as I mentioned earlier, it's a whole textbook being lived out in reality in terms of how to be a leader, how it's important to be a person that is unique and you have your own core values that you hold on to personally first, then how you need to rally the troops and get them to have buy-in to whatever you want to do, and then how you stand true to your cause regardless of whatever is happening around you. It's remarkable. And the fact that you also keep reading. A lot of people feel that when they get to a certain level in life, they should stop learning. And that's also a key takeaway, I'm sure, for most people. And we're waiting for the book. I'm looking forward to it because it should be a very good gift item to give to those, especially those Nigerians in diaspora and those who want to learn about leadership. I can tell you that we had over 1,000 people on Zoom, about 1,000 people on Zoom. I don't know what number we had on YouTube and Instagram right now, but I can assure you also that people actually dialed in from all over. It wasn't only from Nigeria. We had people from Sierra Leone dialing. We had people from South Africa that connected. So this impact of what you have shared with us today has really gone far and wide, and we're really grateful for being candid and being open with us and sharing also some elements of your personal life. Thank you so much for your time. The Vice President is going to do a formal thanks or vote of thanks. It's been a privilege for me to be part of this session, to have moderated and brought out the real person that you are that most people don't know, because we only see the results. We don't know what went on in the thinking and the person, what kind of inner struggles there were. So thank you so much, Khalifa. You can be sure we're going to call you again anytime we're running our gender diversity program. You're certainly going to be one of our candidates because we also push women and women empowerment. So I would stop here. It's been a real privilege for Banji and I to have moderated. Thank you so much. Chuka, over to you.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Sade. So basically, on behalf of the board of the CFA Society Nigeria, I would like to thank His Highness Khalifa Muhammadu Sanusi for sharing his nuggets for success, for effectiveness. Sade has captured, summarized, the key points, the key highlights of our discussion, and as the president Ibuko also mentioned at the beginning, the whole idea is, for young professionals to be able to be well-rounded. So beyond the technical knowledge, they stand to be more effective in their work and in their endeavors. And listening to these nuggets that you've shared, one can just imagine where Nigeria would be if everyone adopts a mindset of excellence and consistency, among others. I want to thank the moderators, Banji and Sade, for the engaging questions. And I also want to thank the guests for their time and for I want to thank the guests for their time and also for listening in. And I also want to thank the Society Office for the work that they've done behind the scenes. Just one more thing for housekeeping. I know many people have asked questions around registration, how to become members. We've shared the link in the chat box, but typically, and this is from personal experience, I just prefer, if I want to get to a certain website, I just simply type the name on Google and it will give me the website. So you can simply type CFA Society Nigeria on the website on Google, and you'll get access to the website, and you will also find our contact details and make my inquiries. I'm also excited that this video is being recorded, because the more Nigerians see this, the better this country would be. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Highness. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and goodbye.
Great honor. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
The wrap. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Nice one.
Woo!
Stop the recording.
Can somebody stop the recording?
Fantastic.
Wow, that was quite.
Thank you all.
It was a well that was just pouring out. Fantastic. I didn't even know